Welcome to Love and Trauma, the real deal. I'm Danielle Sebastian, best-selling author, coach, and yes, I've been through the marriage trenches myself. This show is all about how to actually deal with trauma in relationships and make it work without losing your mind. If you're ready for honest talk, no fluff, and tools that cut through the noise, tune in, because let's face it, love can be a bit of a mess, but it's a mess worth figuring out. This is Love and Trauma, the real deal. All right, everyone. This one's personal today. When my marriage was in crisis, when my husband was deep in trauma recovery, and I was just trying to keep our lives from falling apart, I was running on fumes. And every night, I poured a glass of wine or two, not to celebrate, not to unwind after a fun day, but to cope, just to get through the emotional heaviness I didn't have words for yet. If you've been there or you're still there, I made this episode for you. In this recap episode, I'm sharing two of my most powerful conversations I've had on the show. Both of these women, Catherine Traff and Marcy Hopkins, blew me away, not just because of what they've been through, but because of how real they were about it. So first up is Catherine Traff. She spent over 20 years in the operating room, right next to world-class neurosurgeons at places like Stanford and Mayo Clinic. She was handling life or death situations on the daily, but under all that pressure, she was falling apart. Like so many of us, she turned to alcohol, not to party, but to deal, to numb, to quiet everything she didn't feel safe saying out loud. We got real about what alcohol does to your brain because she knows the science. And spoiler, it's a lot worse than what you've probably heard. She also broke down how you can actually replace the fake calm alcohol gives you with tools that actually make you feel better. For real. And the story of her worst day ever, a brutal, trauma-filled 17-hour shift in the OR that ended with her not drinking for the first time in years, was her turning point. And now she's the founder of Catherine Traff Coaching, the creator of the Revive Method, and she's helping high-achieving women and men ditch alcohol without shame or willpower. Her story, it really did give me chills. And then there's Marcy Hopkins and her interview. Wow, it really hit home. She's a 3-time Telly Award-winning TV host, author, and recovery advocate. But before all of that, she was a little girl growing up in a home full of pain and betrayal. She wasn't protected, she wasn't seen, and like a lot of trauma survivors, she used alcohol to cope until it started destroying the very things she loved the most: her confidence, her relationships, and her family. And what really stuck with me was what kept her going when she chose to get sober. It wasn't some big motivational speech. It was her kids. She wanted to be the mom that they needed. And the thing she's most proud of now, it's not the awards or the show. It's how she repaired her relationships and how she looks in the mirror now and actually likes who she sees. We also talked about boundaries with her because healing isn't just about quitting drinking. It's about protecting your peace. So yeah, these conversations, they're not just about alcohol. They're about what happens when you're carrying someone else's trauma while trying not to lose yourself in the process, or they're about you coping with the trauma in your past. They're about a glass of wine that feels like your only lifeline and what's actually underneath it. So if you've ever thought, is this just my life now? This episode is for you. You're not failing, you're not broken, and you're definitely not alone. So let's get into the interviews.
The thing that I want anybody watching to know is this chapter really documented how the worst day of my entire career at the time, right? It was a 17-hour day working in the operating room. At the time, it felt like the most epic setback of my life. I didn't know how I'd recover from it. I didn't know what to do with it. And I can tell you, nearly 4 years later now, from that awful, awful day, as I sit here in the spotlight talking to Danielle, that awful day actually turned out to be an epic setup for everything I needed to do and to become to be sitting here in front of you today. So, do you want me to just kind of jump into the chapter for everybody,
Yeah.
Danielle? Okay.
Let's just start with that worst day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, for anybody watching or hasn't read my chapter yet, I spent 17 years working for a surgical technology company in the field of neuroscience. And I ran very sophisticated imaging equipment and computer equipment, software, instrumentation for neurosurgeons for some of the most rarefied brain surgeries and spine cases that you can think of. As wonderful and privileged as I was, there came a time before that 17-hour day in the operating room where I was really getting to the place of feeling, I didn't know it at the time, I know it now. I was really reaching a point of burnout. And one of the ways that I coped with the burnout and the demands of the schedule, I can get into that a little bit too, so everybody has an idea about what the pace is like working in that rarefied world. To keep up with that demand on my time and my schedule, I ended up, I had no self-care to speak. I just had no self-care. I was just literally surviving at that point. And the thing that I told myself was the self-care at that point was that if I came home and had got some dinner ready and had my dinner, if I had a glass of wine while I got the dinner ready and I had a glass of wine while I ate the dinner, that it really did an effective job of turning my mind down and slowing my mind down and helping me just to get all my muscles to start relaxing in my body. And to me at the time, I viewed that as self-care, as my treat to deal with this demanding schedule that I was on. It was the kind of life, just to give everybody a little bit of a picture, that my schedule could change day to day during the day, and my schedule depended on when the surgeons were working. I didn't work with just one surgeon. I worked with multiple surgeons across hospitals across the country, and you just had to drop things and go when they needed you.
Let's talk about the day. How did it start?
It started at 6 a.m., technically 5 because I was in the car and I had an hour drive. I walked in the hospital at 6 a.m. thinking I would be done by about 2 or so because I only had a couple of surgeries on that day. And if I slip and I say case, I mean surgery because that's what it
Sure.
gets called in the world of ORs, cases.
Yeah.
And as I walked into the hospital, I was going to be all on my own that day. And I had to be in 2 rooms at once at one point. And I was quite seasoned and quite experienced. I probably should have asked for help, but I didn't ask for help for someone to come and help me out. And because I didn't ask for help, and at that time I was in a place of absolute perfectionism, and I have to do it myself because people will doubt my competency if I don't do it myself. I was really stuck in this mindset around doing every single thing myself. That as I walked into the hospital, I was in a place of panic. At 6 a.m., you're starting your day already in a place of panic, not the best way to start your day off. So I had so many things that I was juggling in pieces of the puzzle that had to come together, and they had to come together perfectly. And I suffered from tremendous perfectionism at that point too. That everything had to be perfect. and the relentless self-talk around what is wrong with you. It has to be perfect. It has to be perfect. It has to be perfect. There's a patient on the table. So as the day was unfolding, you can't make these things up. Like I was having equipment failures that have never happened before. It's my job to fix them in the operating room if the system goes down and the patient's on the table, and they have these great big incisions. And the surgeon's like, when is it going to be fixed? When is it going to be fixed? When is it going to be fixed? Right? Because they're depending on these systems, and it's your job to get it up and running as quickly as possible. So that was happening, and there was different instrumentation that the surgeons use that would get dropped on the floor, and of course you can't use it when it gets dropped on the floor. So then you had to scramble and go see if you could find more instrumentation, but there's this case coming later, and can we get it turned around for the next one? And the reason I'm speaking this way is because I want your audience to get a sense of that's the thing that played in my head all day. Constant chatter, right? There was no relief. And you
Things
also
were not going perfectly.
Nope.
They were not.
Not at all. And I got to the point, it was kind of around 2:00, and I walked by the board where it tells you, when all the different surgeries are starting. And I saw that 2 more cases had been added. And one of them was a very, very complex spine surgery, and those take hours and hours and hours. And you generally do not want to start them late in the afternoon. So
Could you have called for help at that point? Do you think somebody could have come? Okay.
I could have, yeah, but I didn't. But I did it because I had to do it myself.
Yep.
And it wasn't fair to ask somebody to come and work late. Right
at 2, and that
kept telling myself that, okay, just get to this next part, and then, because I thought I was still going to get out of there at a reasonable time, get to this next part. When you leave here, you can go to this store, you can get your favorite bottle of wine. It's very expensive, but you deserve it. You will go home, you will have this, it'll be okay. That's the thing that kept getting me through one piece after another, right? I will get the treat, I will get the treat, I will get the treat. Well, midnight came, and I finally walked out of the hospital after all that kind of day. And of course, nothing's available to go, to go and pick up. And I got home at about 1 a.m, and I had to turn around and come back and do it all again the next day because of all the things that went wrong during that day. I had to go back and fix the next day. So I never got that drink, and that turned out to be day 1 in my new alcohol-free life.
So then you didn't get the wine. You didn't
I didn't
get the
wine.
treat.
I didn't get the treat. And you know what I didn't understand then, Danielle, that I do now, is I went through the most stressful day of my career, and I didn't need any wine to get through it.
So tell us, I bet there's a bunch of high achieving professionals that are struggling with burnout and alcohol use. Mm-hmm. What are some of the warning signs you wish you would have seen earlier?
If you're having something to drink every day and you ask yourself, I wonder if I have a problem, or if you feel like, I don't think I should be doing this, but you just don't quite know, what am I going to do if I don't do this? I want you to recognize that if you think it's a problem, it's a problem.
So how did you do it? Tell me.
Well, the thing that worked the best for me was I understood the structures of the brain. I understood why they did what they did, how they, ran different parts of your body. But the thing that was getting in my way was I had outdated health data to make decisions on about if alcohol is a healthy part of your diet or not. Right. So
yes, the one glass of wine or one for women, 2 for men is healthy kind of thing.
Yes. So especially in the 90s, it really ramped up around red wine, and red wine is healthy for you. The thing that got my attention was I came across a study that the National Health Service in the UK commissioned. It was a huge, huge study, very well done. As far as study quality goes, because I'm a study nerd, remember I was in that field of psychiatry, and that was our world, is studying studies, right? And as I was going through the quality of the study, I was like, this is the best of the best quality. And the main takeaways from that study was there are 0 safe amounts of alcohol. Any physicians in the UK who had patients who were currently drinking any quantity were counseled to offer alcohol cessation classes, kind of like cigarettes, cessation smoking classes, that type of thing,
Mhm.
and to really encourage patients to just stop drinking altogether, right? And it really got my attention. And the other thing that got my attention was I came across the work of Dr. Daniel Amen, who is, if anybody doesn't know him, he's a psychiatrist who's done the most brain scans of any physician in the world. That's all he does is do brain scans and study brains. And Dr. Amen had some data presented about somebody my age drinking 1 to 3 drinks a night. And here's the brain scan. Here's somebody who doesn't drink anything that age. Here's somebody who's a moderate drinker. Here's what their brain looked like. And remember, I spent 17 years staring at brain scans. So I knew what I was
You
looking
literally,
at.
literally,
I
I did.
literally was staring at brain scans my entire
Yes.
career. And I saw that and I was like, because this was not very far into me, like getting it out of my diet, right? And I saw that scan. I said, "Oh my gosh," because the brain heals slowly. I'm like, my brain looks like that right now. This
What
is
does it look like? What does it look like?
so anybody can find it. So
Okay.
just do a quick Google search, Dr. Daniel Amen, and then the scan is called SPECT, SPECT. And then you can put in alcohol, no alcohol, and then search it by images, and you'll be able to find the image. So the scans are done in color, and a person who doesn't drink anything and who has a healthy brain has a nice, smooth looking brain. It looks very symmetrical, looks nice and plump, and it's all this kind of a uniform, pretty color. And then the brain that is damaged is all kind of lumpy, bumpy. It looks a little bit shrunken. And what that scan measures is blood flow in the brain and how well oxygenated the brain is in those areas. And so that lumpy, bumpy is terrible, right? And there's a little
Really?
bit of, if anybody knows the term atrophy, there's a little bit of brain atrophy going on as well, which is not good. So that scared the you know what out of me, folks. And I
I
just
know,
thought,
because you don't hear about that very often, do you?
you never
You
hear.
hear about the high blood pressure, the other physical effect, but you don't
Mhm.
hear that often about how
Yep.
difficult it is for the brain.
That's why I refer to myself as a brain health mentor for anybody I'm helping come off of alcohol and just get it out of your diet altogether, is because most people have never been fully counseled, especially by their physicians, the true risk, especially when you get into your 40s and 50s, about the continued consumption and what's happening in your brain during this year. So you've got declining hormonal levels, in addition to the damage that the alcohol is doing with restricting blood flow to the brain.
Less
So you've
blood
got this
flow.
this 1-2 combination just beating up your brain.
Do you
Mhm.
have brain fog?
Yes, yes. So
Memory?
all
Tell
of that
us
stuff.
the okay.
Yep. Some of the things that were most crippling to me that I thought was only menopause at first.
Yeah, we like to blame it on memory.
I'm like, oh, the menopause is terrible. It's brain fog. Yeah, I didn't suffer like a lot of women's. I had some kind of mild hot flashes, but the thing that was most intense for me was this very intense brain fog. And when you are in the operating room,
Not good.
trying to run this sophisticated equipment for surgeons, trying to help get them to trust you that you know what you're doing if you're working with somebody you haven't worked with, and you're in the middle of brain fog, it makes you look like you don't know what you're doing. And there was a couple times I nearly got fired because people thought I didn't know what I was doing, and it was the brain fog.
Mm.
So compounded by the 1 or 2 drinks that I had had the night before because I didn't sleep because it disrupted my sleep, right?
Yes, and then the sleep effects, right?
Every night between 2 and 3 o'clock, I would wake up. And in the chapter, I talk about, mean girl yelling at me about why are you doing this to yourself? And this just this beratement would happen. So that brings me to, I know we're starting to get kind of close on time here, but when I got that medical data, that current
Mhm.
accurate medical data, along with my knowledge about the structures in the brain and why they do what they do, I started putting those things together and going, well, no wonder I'm doing what I'm doing, right? And
Yeah.
then the mindset piece got introduced to me because I remember I had asked Holy Spirit for help because I'm like, I've never made it past 30 days. Like, what do I do here? So the mindset piece showed up, and I started learning really important principles about how thought patterns are formed in your brain, right? So in neuroscience, there's this merger of psychology and neuroscience going on right now that we've never seen before. Things make so much sense that never made sense before. We always thought the two things were separate, but the mind controls the brain, right? And you can use the mind to start to rewire the brain because it's neuroplastic. It means it can make new connections at any time. For those people watching who don't know, like, what is Catherine talking about right now?
Yeah.
So the mindset piece came in, and then the third critical piece, and I'll give you some science behind this too, was the faith practice. And the science piece of it is thanks to the work of Dr. Andrew Newberg, who is also a psychiatrist or research psychiatrist. He studied all kinds of people who had some kind of faith practice, whether you were a Buddhist monk, whether you're a Catholic nun, maybe you're a Mormon. He studied their brains while they were practicing their faith. Or if you were just meditating, maybe people just called
Meditate.
themselves spiritual and they were just meditating. Dr. Newberg found that the same reward circuit in your brain that lights up when you have a cigarette, when you're scrolling on TikTok, when you are eating a piece of candy, right? That dopamine center, that reward center in your brain lights up when you are meditating, when you are in prayer, when you are practicing your faith. That same center lights up. So when you remove something, right, that's been giving you this reward, a lot of people struggle with, the cravings, et cetera. That's where I can help with the neuroscience, how the brain works. But the reason the faith piece is so important is when you get a new input to that same reward circuit, it's much easier to leave the thing that wasn't serve you and bring in something that does serve you, and you're getting rewarded for doing it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Brilliant.
So those three things I put together for myself, and I'm happy to tell you 4 years later, never had a slip, never went back.
So you don't drink at all now?
I don't drink anything, and
Okay.
this is the way I talk to my prospective clients. Is my goal is to help you get to the point where alcohol's out of your diet and you never miss it. Because I got to that place at about year one. I'm
Year
like,
one.
why would I? And
Okay.
here's the other important thing I want everybody to know is I never, ever, ever, ever tell myself you are never drinking again. Right? I have never told myself that. What I do is I kind of go through, if a situation ever is presented to me where it's interesting to me, right? Because especially early on, it was interesting to me for a whole bunch of reasons. And I would walk my through a process of, okay, yeah, you can have that if you'd like. Let's kind of review what you can expect because you have 5 years of data about how you reacted when you consume these things, right? So you're like, okay, I'll feel pretty good for about 20 to 40 minutes. I'll go to bed early because I'm sleepier than usual. I'll wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning. I won't be able to go back to sleep. Mean girl will be starting to do this again. And then I'm going to have to be up the next morning. Is that 20,
Is it
40
worth it?
minutes worth it? And I always, always answer, oh, nope. And that's how you get to the point of, I don't miss it. I do not miss it.
Tell me, is there any research that says that when you stop drinking that what happens to the brain is reversed?
There's loads of data, loads
Okay.
of data. You can reverse your brain health, right? Now, if you've been a serious, serious, serious alcoholic for many, many years, it will take its toll. But your brain does have the capacity to heal itself. And especially if you are someone who was more in that gray zone, like I was, your brain 100% can heal itself, right? You need to feed it the good food. Obviously, you need to just stay away from it altogether. And then, the exercise piece is critical too. Anything you can do to get nutrition and blood flow to the brain enhances and speeds up the recovery.
That's very enlightening and hopeful.
Yes.
Yeah,
I don't want
but it
anybody to
can
feel like,
be.
oh no, it's too late
It's
for
too
me.
late.
No, it's never too late.
Right.
Nope.
Oh, I love that. If you could go back to yourself on that day 0 before that 17-hour shift,
Mm.
what would you whisper to her?
You're stronger than you know. You're about to go through something that is not fun, but it will change your life for the better forever.
You're stronger than you know.
You're stronger than you know.
Welcome to Love and Trauma, the real deal. I'm Danielle Sebastian, best-selling author, coach, and yes, I've been through the marriage trenches myself. This show is all about how to actually deal with trauma in relationships and make it work without losing your mind. If you're ready for honest talk, no fluff, and tools that cut through the noise, tune in, because let's face it, banging your head against the wall trying to navigate the complexities of a relationship impacted by childhood trauma, it doesn't have to be this daunting. When you're married to a partner with unresolved childhood trauma, it can feel like you're walking on eggshells, never quite knowing what will set them off. No matter what you try, it feels like there's always something triggering another emotional response that seems completely out of context. And the harder you try to fix it, the more discouraged you feel. So what's the issue here? Navigating marriage with a trauma survivor is different. The love languages don't work. Date nights don't work. Self-help books don't help. But here's the good news. I've created something that does work. Something built from years of hard-earned lessons and real-life experience. Ready to take the first step toward real change? Let's talk. I'm offering a free one-on-one call where we'll dive into what's going on in your relationship and figure out a way forward together. This isn't just another quick chat. It's a chance to finally be heard, to share what you're going through with someone who truly gets it. No judgment, just real support. So if you're ready to start making sense of it all and find a little more peace in your marriage, book your free call now. Your happiness, your peace, and your relationship are worth it. Let's do it together.
So really, it's about breaking the chains from my past, the trauma that from my past. And I share a lot about that, about my the sexual abuse in my life, my mother not saving me, my mother being an alcoholic, myself coping with alcohol. So it was really just breaking the chains, those ties that I had to my past that had formed this person that I'd become in my adulthood. And that was a victim, and it was someone full of a lot of pain, a lot of hate, a lot of resentment. And I had to do a lot to change my life. I stopped drinking almost 10 years ago, and I started on my healing journey. And the thing is if we have any addiction of any sort, uh, most times we are masking something bigger. And that for me was my childhood trauma. And so I share about the trauma and how my DUI, which was my last, my rock bottom, was the last time I drank, and how that felt for me, how the shame and the guilt and the resentment of myself, right, the hate for myself, how I had to let that go. I had to free myself of that. I had to forgive myself. I had to forgive others in my life. And I had to begin to live a life in gratitude and recognize that my past didn't define me, that I was worthy of love, and I was worthy of an incredible life. And that's what I am doing today. I have turned my pain into purpose by helping other people.
Thank you for sharing that.
Mhm.
Can you take us back to that rock bottom moment
Yeah.
and what you did to pull out of it?
Mm. Well, for me, of course, everybody's story is different, but I've been drinking basically my entire life to cope. I mean, to have a couple glasses of wine a night was very normal. And there's a lot of people out there, and that is very normal. The only thing is that for me, I got in front of the camera in my 40s, and I was going through perimenopause. I was raising my children. My husband worked all the time. So it was like this perfect storm. With the mayhem of my life at that time, my drinking began to elevate. Well, I ultimately made the decision to go to AA, and I went for about 3 months. And I don't think at that time that I was fully believing that I had alcohol use disorder. So I convinced myself that I didn't have a problem. And that next year, my drinking elevated. There's something called a slippery slope. So it's kind of like you start slowly drinking more, and then it's like you like pass over this like imaginary line where now you're drinking and it's really inappropriate. I drank my liquid courage, and I ended up going out with a girlfriend after, and I got behind the wheel in a blackout. And I got arrested. Actually, the experience, I think God knew that I needed to have a major consequence to change in my life. And so the experience was not bad for me, thankfully. I'm so thankful. And then I called my girlfriend in hopes that she could come grab me. And somehow I was going to like hide all of this, right? Because, yeah, so my husband wouldn't know. So I wouldn't get in trouble. And then my husband walked up, and he was like yelling, like, how did he find out? And the police had called him because it was local police. And so, yeah, so he took me home. There was silence, and I went to bed, and I was feeling sorry for myself. And I had a lot of resentment towards my husband. Like if he were around more, like everything was his fault why I was doing and acting out the way that I was. But I woke up the next morning, and like, I just surrendered. Like God stepped in, and I knew that I was like, what are you doing? You're about to lose everything that you've worked so hard to build in your life, to build a beautiful life that that I never thought even possible that I would have. And so I went down to my husband that morning, and I sat down with him, and honestly, I was so afraid that he was going to leave me and take the children. And I told him that I needed help, that I was an alcoholic, and that I was willing to do whatever it took to get sober and be the best person I could be. And that's where it started for me.
How old were your kids?
They were 12 and 8. Mm-hmm.
And you and your husband, are you still together?
Yep. Yeah. We have a wonderful relationship now.
Oh, good. That
Yeah.
is the
Yeah.
silver lining in this is that you can overcome even hitting rock bottom. And essentially, did you have to learn different coping mechanisms?
Well, that's what it's all about. I mean, we really have to, in shifting the way that we think about ourselves, there's so much that we have to do to rewire the way that we think and we react and that we think about ourselves, and our tools that we use when we're triggered, and calming our nervous system and living in gratitude and forgiveness. So there's many. I have a whole program I've put together that incorporates everything that I've learned. And I now live a magical life. I'm able to communicate effectively. I'm able to now have healthy boundaries. I'm able to advocate for myself and use my voice effectively. I move through the fear. I know how to be resilient now, and just look at life through a different lens, because we are so programmed from what happens in our childhood, right? And if it's not your childhood, then maybe it's a really bad relationship that you got in, and they've torn you down, and now you've got to build yourself back up, because our belief system is not real. It's just a belief. It's what we think, and that can be changed. And so, yes, that's what I've had to do, and in changing, coping with everything in life.
What was the hardest truth that you had to face about yourself on this path?
Hmm. Well, I think one of the hardest things to do is to look at yourself and recognize the things that you're doing wrong, because so often we want to blame everyone else, right? So what was hardest for me was looking at myself and realizing that I had a role in so much of what had gone wrong in my life. Not the abuse, not what my mom did, not the sexual abuse, not any physical abuse, none of those things, but in negative relationships and things that happened in work, um just things in general, in the way you're parenting, whatever it is, the way that you have relationships with other people, friends, family. So I had to do a real deep dive, and I had to start looking at myself. And when you start, one of the exercises is when you start writing down like the people that have wronged you, and you start realizing those stories. There's something through that. When you write it down, you share it with someone that you really trust. Maybe it's a really good friend. If you're in the 12-step program, maybe it's someone else in the program. Maybe it's a priest, but it's through like sharing that, right? So you take it and you're releasing that outside of yourself, right? And then you sit with yourself. And over time, you will start to recognize, now, who have I wronged? What have I done, right? And what was my role? And so I had to really recognize there were a lot of people that I blamed in my life for the things that were wrong, and my husband included. And I had to go very deep and start to recognize my own my own ways that I was reacting to life, and the ways that I needed to change.
Yeah, my husband's, he suffered childhood trauma, and I felt like the shame that he felt and carried, it was very hard for him to, it was just especially hard for him to,
Sure, as a man,
because the
this,
shame you feel to admit that, oh my gosh, some of these things, you know, could be my reactions.
yeah, and we we learn as a young person how to cope with that and how to survive that, right? So we take those survival mechanisms into our everyday life, our adulthood. So when we go into any relationship, we still have all that baggage that we're bringing in. And then, so the way that we coped and we survived, we actually bring that into our relationships. And we think that we are protecting ourselves. But the reality is, most times we are pushing away the ones that we really love.
Let's talk about your relationship. I mean, can you, and I know you've already talked about it, but how did the alcoholism really play out in the relationship?
When I drank, I wasn't nice, because that's when I was triggered very easily.
Okay.
All my pain would come out. A fight was sure to ensue. And then the way that my husband dealt with it is that he would just shut down. And so that drove me even crazier, because like I wanted to be heard. And at one time I thought just yelling was how you were heard. But now I very much know that that is not how we can communicate effectively, and get our needs across. But that's how it was at the time. And so just the drinking, it was a back and forth thing. It was just a volley constantly. And then towards the end, it was very obvious that my drinking had elevated, no doubt about that. And he really just kept saying to me that he wanted me to get healthy. Because again, you can't tell someone to get sober. You can't. Because if there were times that he would talk to me about my drinking, and you know what I did? I drank more because I was resentful and angry. You're not going to tell me that. You just don't know how to have fun, right? And he also, he was an executive. So he had this idea, like I was thinking, no, he just wants me to be a Stepford wife. So there's all these ideas, right, around this. So it was definitely something that we had to manage for the majority of our relationship. And towards the end, it was something that almost destroyed our relationship.
So tell me, how has healing changed the way that you show up in relationships today?
Well, I certainly don't need validation from my partner anymore. I certainly don't need to try to be everything to him first. Like, I show up for myself. I show up as the best version of myself today, so I don't have to rely on someone else dictating who I'm going to be, right? And just, again, setting those healthy boundaries, self-care, advocating for myself, living in gratitude, being grateful for the love that I have with my partner, right? So just showing up as someone, as being two individuals that are great together and enhancing each other's lives, instead of that person needing to fulfill me all the time, right? It's enough that you got to do it for yourself. But I needed somebody else to always be validating me, always be lifting me up, telling me how great I was because I was so insecure. I don't need that anymore. I have found that within myself and through my spiritual practice and through the work that I have done. And so now I get to be my best self on my own and be the best to my kids and my husband now.
And your true partners.
Yeah.
Instead of one taking quite a bit of the load and how you feel.
Exactly. So I just feel like we're just good to each other. We just are good to each other now. And listen, we have our bumps in the road, right? And sometimes there may be a little a reaction that's maybe not that pause and then think about what you're going to say. But the good thing is today, like you can get to a point where you're like, oh, 10 minutes later, like, I am so sorry I reacted that way. I should have not said that, or shouldn't have reacted, instead of that fight that starts. Now somebody said something that hurts the other person. Now the person wants to prove that person hurt them. Then they want to prove who's right. They're not listening to each other and how that has affected them. They both have different perceptions. And now they're screaming at the top of their lungs. Somebody's left. And what has been, what has come of that? Over probably a sink, a plate in the sink. And it's not even the root of the real reason they're arguing. You know what I mean? So
I do all the downstream, and then it's really easy to focus on all the downstream and never get to the
exactly,
you said, the root, why it happened in the first place. Yeah,
exactly. And it's like, you really, really got to learn to respect one another, understand that you have different perceptions, the way you address things, when you address things, and just really learn to communicate.
One last question. What has been one of the most rewarding moments of your journey so far?
Oh, God.
I know.
I mean, the most rewarding would be my ability to be the mother that I am today. Truly.
You're present. Tell me what that means.
So I am extremely present with my children. I am not reactive to them. I am understanding to them. I show up for them. I allow them to come to me and speak with me without fear, right? I have a very deep understanding and I put myself in their place. And I think that's so important because when we parent, so often we bring in our past parenting, like maybe your father did it a certain way. And well, I was terrified of my father. And so now my children must be terrified, right? Like, but do they? Do they really have to be terrified? What a terrible way to live, to be in fear of the people that love you, that are supposed to love you. There is a very positive way we can parent our children and to show up. And I don't have to show up drinking and have them see that all the time, where mom's out there drinking her wine. Would I rather be out with her friends? I just show up and I'm present and I allow them to be honest with me, and that I'm not going to react, that I'm really here to help them. Because honestly, screaming, yelling, reacting, those things are not going to get what you want out of your child. Your child's not going to be the best version of themselves. Help them to learn through the mistakes that they're making, and then how they can deal with it and be better on the other side of it. That's how we can parent and be good to our children and break those generational cycles and help them to be better people than for your grandchildren.
Thank you for being an example of how you can make these changes. And it's never too late, right? I mean, your kids were 12 and what was it? 12 and 8.
Yeah.
There's time. There's always time.
There is.
It's never too late.
There is. And you know what? If there's pain and trauma, that you're just start anywhere that you are, right? And yes, there are people around you that are going to be affected by whatever it is. It doesn't have to be alcoholism. It could be whatever it is, that maybe it is your past trauma and you're just a very reactive person in life, right? You play that victim in life, right? And you are affecting other people by being that way. But if you heal and you get better and you see a different way, allow your children to get the healing that they need and the help that they need. Not just yourself. Everyone needs to heal.
If you're still here with me, first of all, thank you. This episode was raw, it was real, and it brought up a lot. And I know that I'm not the only one who needed to hear it. These stories from Catherine and Marcy reminded me so much of my own journey. Back when my marriage was barely hanging on and I felt like I was drowning in my husband's trauma, wine became my coping mechanism. And not because I didn't care, but because I cared too much and I really didn't know what else to do. So here's the real deal. The 3 biggest takeaways from this episode and the 3 shifts that actually helped me get out of survival mode. So what I took away from their stories is, number 1, alcohol is often a symptom, not the root. We don't drink because we're careless. We drink because we're hurting. And no one taught us what else to do with the pain. Catherine and Marcy both reminded me that if we want to break the habit, we often have to go deeper to the why behind the wine. Number 2, your brain and your body can heal. I don't think that we hear enough the damage that alcohol does to our brains, but it's not forever. So I loved Catherine's neuroscience expertise on that. And Marcy showed what emotional healing can look like when we start showing up for ourselves with love instead of shame. And number 3, looking at your role in your situation. Marcy's story hit me hard. When I was in the midst of the worst moments in my relationship, I really thought everything was out of my control. If my husband didn't do this, if this didn't happen, then there wasn't anything that I could do. And it was only by really looking at my role in the situation did things really start to improve in my relationship. Now, today I do several things that help me cope without the wine that I wish I would have done back then that I wanted to share with you really quickly. Number one, I planned 5 tiny restoration moments a day. I know that all of us want the big spa weekend. And yes, I love those things, but I found that I needed them every day more than just once a month or once a quarter. So I picked out 5 little things that I could do in 20 minutes or less, like stepping outside, taking a real lunch break, and journaling before bed. And those micro moments really helped me give relief where I didn't feel like I had to grab that glass. The second thing is I'm matching my energy, my activity to my energy. I don't know why when I was in the crisis phase, I thought that pushing my intense workout routine would make me feel better because it always had. But sometimes rest is the workout you need. A slow walk, stretching, or lying down for 10 minutes was what my body actually needed. And you guys, finally, I stopped doing what I thought I should do because everyone else told me to do it, or I felt the pressure that I needed to do it. I really started to let the pressure to perform, to keep up, to fix it all, to look outside the box for worked for our relationship and stop thinking about what everybody else was. And that's when things really started to change for me. So if you're sitting in your kitchen and looking at that glass of wine you had last night and wondering if you're broken or lazy or doing it all wrong, I promise you, you're not. This is the real deal. You're not alone. You're not failing. And there is a better way forward. So let's keep going together. See you next time.
All right, that's a wrap for today on Love and Trauma, the real deal. Big thanks to my guests for sharing their insights. Couldn't have done it without you. Now, for those of you looking to take this journey further, I've got something special. Head to my website to grab Real Tactics, Real Healing, a survivor's playbook for navigating a relationship with a trauma survivor. It's packed with everything you need to know, do, and say to navigate the emotional minefield, find your balance, and regain your self-worth and happiness.